So what is your name?
I'm Nancy Jo Dow-Reed,
Okay. And what was your graduation year?
1959.
Okay. What were the major historical moments during your career at North?
I think part of the history would have been the seniors, when I was a freshman at the old school, went half day because it was so crowded. And so we were the last freshman class to go through the old school, but the first class to go all 3 years through Columbus High School.
Awesome.
So we really felt special.
Oh, that's cool. What was the school atmosphere like whenever you were there?
Oh, it was fun. And it was such a great time for sports. They built the gym. We didn't have a theater yet, so the theater we still used at the old school, and our high school senior play was at the old school, where last night I just watched my grandson be in a play at Central. So that was fun times. We had proms and ball games. This is my senior chords. Cheer block was so important. Ball games were packed. One of the things, the biggest thing that I see now at games is they're not as attended because there's so many sports and choices, and they don't sing the Columbus cheer song anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My saddle Oxfords. I kept everything. In cheer block, we had beanies and mittens. And at the old high school as freshmen, this is my gym suit and my bathing suit.
Oh,
As you can tell,
awesome.
I was skinny back then. We wrung these out through a hand wringer, like the old wringers on washing machines, and with wet hair, because there was a Wilson building and the gymnasium and then the old building, we'd be running back and forth between buildings with wet hair. That was not fun. The other thing, when we had a period, you were not allowed to swim. So we had to sit in the upstairs of the old Cracker Box gym. And the boys would be having gym class down there, and we were always going, they know we're having our periods.
That's funny.
This is one of my purses. Had a little change thing that you put your money in and the cards. Autograph books were big back then. What's great about autograph books is you can look back and see friends now, and my family, my dad signed it. The log, this is from 1926. My Aunt Josephine's log, I was named after her, Nancy Jo. She was killed in an automobile accident in 1940, and I was born in 1941. There's a picture of my Aunt Hazel in here, who was a teacher here. My grandparents would have gone to this school. My parents went to the school, and now I have grandchildren at this school.
That is so cool.
Yes. Webb Salmon was one of the best English teachers. And a critical analysis of the soil bank controversy back then was probably pretty boring. So I got an A-. Dwayne Barrows taught health and safety. And this is, look at the handwriting. And then we cut things out of the newspaper. These were the kind of reports we had. Dwayne Barrows was an excellent swim coach. Unfortunately, he was killed in a wreck when he went to Indiana State to coach. This is an after prom party record. My mother and dad were on it, and it cost $2,000 back then to put on the prom. These are pictures from my grade school, the basketball team. At Clifty, one of my first impressions of high school was the counselor came out to the county schools, Booth Setzer and Clifty, and said, you county kids probably should not take a foreign language the first year until you get used to high school. We were definitely looked down upon. So we went to grade school for 2 years at State Street, and then from 3rd grade through 6th grade, we went to the Army Barracks on 25th Street and Central Avenue. And those were the pits. They painted the inside. The buses pulled up. The smell was so toxic, they put us back on the buses and sent us home that day. These are pictures of my friends from high school. I kept everything. So you have here the season tickets to the ball games. The towel fee was $1. We were charged $1 in gym class. 4-H was big back then too, so I was in a 4-H club and a square dance group. We were called the Rhythm Rascals. I still have those dresses. And stories in the newspaper about our 4-H projects. This is my 4-H club in front of my house. My mother was the leader, and this was a play that we were doing down in my basement. We loved being counselors at camp for 4-H. I kept my records and manuals. And then Tri-High-Y was a big group at the high school. And here were all the presidents. There were 5 groups. So there I am on the end. I was always short. I'm still short. I love to narrate and be in plays. And this is me as the Tri-High-YA had a style show. So these are pictures from the style show. And I've given copies of these. This is a local realtor now. And it's fun to look back and see the styles. As you can see, we were thinner back then. But the White House department store was the one who provided the clothing. And I ended up working there in college in the summer. Our friend Maggie Cummins' dad had the Coke plant. So we'd always get our picture taken for the log advertisements drinking Coke at slumber parties. Oh, this was another health and safety report.
So cool.
Everything handwritten. I was in Quill and Scroll. I was on the Triangle.
I didn't close scroll.
In plays, that's me. Doing blackface, you couldn't do that now. Miss Murray, most of the teachers were single because back then when they first started teaching, you couldn't be married. So we had a lot of single women. Miss Murray was in charge of the plays, and she was a character. This is she in my Bev Fritchen play. And for the senior plays, they always did comedies. And she decided that year we should do The Robe, and we're going The Robe. It was a religious story. But we had 2 young men, Roger Callahan and Scott Wood, that were going to be ministers. So there was a showing of The Robe at the Crump Theater, and after we saw it, we said, we want to do that. So I got to play Diana, the lead woman in The Robe. Here we are. These all turned out to be very good writers, and we had such a good time. They took that down to the Republic back then, and then the Republic would print it, and it was published every Friday. We had a newspaper every week. We passed notes. So I'm not sure which one this is, but passing notes was a good way to get in trouble. And one of the teachers, if they caught you passing a note, you had to get up in front of the class and read it. This one is, you're so cute, little girl, with a cute little figure. Stand by boys till she gets a little bigger. Lame.
Wait.
We had books with our senior cards in them. Our proms were fun. Everybody came. They had just started having after prom parties. One of these was held in the Donner Pool.
Oh, that's cool.
The water wasn't in there yet. It was in May. That's from the prom. This is an after prom report from the Finance Committee. The people that they had contacted, my parents both served. As I told you, my mother made the gum, the meat for the play, or for the party. And then we had senior parties, and people would come to your house and have cake and punch. And this is my book of guests from back then. And again, hi Joe, my daddy, my brother. And you look back at these names and have such great memories. Mm-hmm. This is the graduation of 1959. We had a huge class. It was over 400 kids. The neat thing,
Can I see that?
Yeah, oh yes, you certainly can. And Russell Hicks. I brought this particular triangle because Mr. Marston was the science teacher. And back then, the building, this would be the front of the building. So the math classes were here and the science classes were here. Russell Hicks was very bright, and he and another young man and Mr. Marston, the chemistry teacher, were working on rockets. This was at the beginning when rockets were becoming popular. And all of a sudden, when we were in math class with Mr. Stearman in algebra, a window blew out of the science rooms. And Russell Hicks had lit the rocket. And it had a bad mix, and it just went soaring through that window. It was quite something. And then my picture of Ralph Denny. If you look on the War Memorial down by the courthouse, Ralph Denny's letter is there. He sat, we always sat alphabetical. He sat in front of me. He had an elongated head in the back, and he was at Clifty School with me, so I knew he wasn't very smart. Unfortunately, back then, they were taking everybody. They were drafting everybody. Ralph never should have gone to Vietnam. He was killed there, and his letter is on that memorial. And I always think of him. 109, as a freshman, that huge big building, the study hall down at the old school, had creaky floors and radiators. And somebody at lunchtime went to the dime store and bought a bottle of Blue Waltz perfume. They poured it on the radiators, and the smell of that was so sickening, they had to evacuate our study hall. We were laughing. I never knew who did it, but it got us out of study hall that day. And then I brought some of my clothes and jewelry. Beads were very popular back then, as were initial, necklaces. Charm bracelets were really big. These were my medals from school. Rainbow Girls was popular back then. And pop beads. Did you ever see pop beads?
Oh, I had some of those.
So you could make your own jewelry and make it longer or
That is
shorter.
So cool.
Pop beads. Conscience rings. It's a little elf, and it was supposed to prick you if you did something bad. It didn't work. And initials, NJD, Nancy Jo Daup. My high school class ring, 1959. Bracelets were so popular, especially snap-ons. And then one of my most precious memories is from Tri-High YA. And the girls signed it for me because I was president that year. And my friends, Carol Boyer, had diabetes, and when we would go to ball games with her, she had to have her shots. One ball game we went to, and the shot didn't work. It had bubbles in it, and we kept flicking it. When we finally got the shot in her, we weren't sure if she had enough liquid. She was fine. We got home. Her mother was okay. But to this day, I carry a piece of candy in my purse in memory of Carol. She died at the age of 40. I brought some of my clothes. Back then, we wore big skirts with crinolines. Can you feel it? They are so itchy and scratchy. So they would tear your hose.
Yeah.
And back then, our hose had a seam down the back, so you always had to make sure they were straight. So you can imagine flouncing around in these, but boy, when we danced, we looked great. This is one of my high school dresses. You can see how tiny I was back then. The woolen mill was in Seymour. So go ahead and feel this.
Oh, that is so soft.
And it's scratchy. It's soft, but it's scratchy.
Yeah.
But you could get discounts down there on wool. I was so short, that's why I couldn't be in a style show. Nothing would fit me. So my clothes were made, and this is chinchilla. This is my coat from when I was in high school. And prom dress.
Oh,
That's okay. Sorry. Can you see?
no. Oh, yeah, those are gorgeous.
Here, can you scoot them over a little bit this way? They're not on camera. Oh my goodness.
And again, we had crinolines under them. So they really stood out.
Yeah.
What was fun is that my daughter Mandy was in Greece here at North. She was the only one that could fit in these dresses because you all are bigger boned now, bigger busted, taller, but she was still thin enough that she could wear these. And then when I taught in this school system, we definitely went the other way. This is one of my dresses when I taught in the 60s, along with my pantsuit. I was a hippie. And my parents went to North. I have a grandson at North now. I have wonderful memories. I've kept these things, and I will definitely donate them to the Alum Association so generations from now could see how it used to be in 1956 through 59.
Awesome.
Thank
you
you.
so
Thank you
much.
so much.
That was,
Is there anything else you can think of?
I mean, I can ask you another question.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Let's see. What, in your opinion, made your time at North unique?
Because we were that first class to go through North and have a brand new school after going to Barracks, but everybody was so social and going to the games and having parties. The neat thing too were the teachers back then, because again we had a lot of single teachers. Mr. Utterback was an albino, and he taught Latin. And the first day he goes to the window on the front side of North School and goes, "Mica, mica, parva stella." We're all going, we don't know what this is. And my friend Connie finally figured out it was "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." They don't teach Latin anymore. Things change. But back then we had Miss Murray, Miss Butler, Miss Folger, all these single women teachers. And you could see that they still had an influence on us and the way the world was changing, because they encouraged we girls to go to college. Back then you could be a teacher, a nurse, or in business you would be a secretary. And that was it. But they were an encouragement to us. One of my teachers in reading class said, after I read Charlie's Travels by Mark Twain, she said, "Why did you read this book?" And I said, "Because I want to travel someday." And I was a farm kid, and we didn't have a lot of money. And she said, "You'll never go anywhere. You'll never travel abroad." Well, we lived in Belgium for 6 years. We've traveled the world. We have a daughter that lives in France, so I proved her wrong. And that was just the mentality back then.
Yeah.
Another teacher, I was in an easy English class as a freshman because they put us county kids, you know. So sure enough, Mrs. Davis absolutely insisted that I get put in a different English class. So I remember back then, especially the women teachers were encouraging girls to do more. And even though we were going to be teachers or whatever, they knew, I think, back then that we had a future that was going to be different than what they'd had. Mm-hmm. And now look what you all can do.
Yeah.
And back then, you lined up, you had a lottery even for the tickets for basketball games because we're so popular. But as you can see, I have a soccer shirt on because my Graham Keel plays soccer here at North, and is an outstanding player, as was his dad. So we've been going to soccer games at North for a long time.
That's awesome. I know Graham. Yeah.
Neat.
Okay, well, I think we're good. Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming.
so
Oh, thank
much.
you.